Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Leadership Book of the Month. I'm Kelly Byrnes here with Bret and Dave. Welcome, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
We are excited to be here for a new one. I forgot to push the video button for the intro video. We're such professionals.
That's funny that you say that. You know, Travis Kelsey and Jason Kelsey, all those guys, they've got the microphone and the earphones and all that. And I thought, you know what? If we need to go prime time, we need to start investing in some real equipment. So I don't know. Maybe I'll ask that for Christmas.
Yeah, and get all the fancy equipment and there you go. I have some of that stuff.
Good noise canceling headphones. They are amazing.
Awesome. I might need to get mine out because our leaf blower guy is coming today sometime. So considering it's 4:00 right now where we are, he's probably coming soon. So who knows? Do you guys want to do an intro and an update? Bret, go ahead. You can go first.
Sure. So hi, everybody. Thank you for the intro, Kelly. I really appreciate that. My name is Bret Getzel, and this is now my 32nd year in industry. So multiple C-level positions and along the way, 22-year stint in the Missouri National Guard, which kind of will be fun to talk about today. Had one tour in Afghanistan in 2006. So we'll touch a little bit more on that as we dive in to today's book. My background, sales leadership, food service, international protein trading, supply chain management, but do an awful lot in that meat space, primarily in food service. And like I said, it is truly a global business. On the phone with people in Europe this morning. I have some appointments next week, some people from Brazil. So yeah, it's amazing how global that is. So lots of big words there, but if you're a listener, I'd actually ask, why should I invest my time? Your most precious currency, I call it, in listening, because the team, Dave, and Kelly, got years and years of experience, and hope you can benefit from that in your personal map. So we do a monthly pregame almost every month. Some months we don't get to it, but mostly we do. And we try to kind of flesh out, before we figure out when we go live, we know exactly what we're going to talk about. And we always say that your preparation is, and your presentation is a function of your lowest level of preparation. So we do prep pretty hard. So we always talk a little bit about our why. And I'm always thinking about, hey, I'm investing time in the book. I'm investing time in talking with Kelly and Dave. Why do I do that? And then I ask myself, are we making a difference? So this month, as we touched on that, we kept coming back to this word discipline. And I said, simple enough. And then we talked a little bit about how challenging it needs to be disciplined. It's a simple word, right? You would not expect that being disciplined would be all that hard. And then you say, well, why? Why is it so hard? It's a tough choice. And so a lot of these books, discipline is one of those concepts that comes in there. And I expect we can all relate to that. We know somebody who's lost weight or given up alcohol or took up exercise, something like that. And then I kept going back to the Jocko Willink extreme ownership. So now the why, right? The premise of our time together today is to do nothing more than inspire. That's, as I was thinking about this, I really reflected on it a lot. And I just said, what, if I can inspire one person to be more disciplined, I like that word, be more disciplined, whether they're a leader, whether they're young, whether they're old, we will have made a difference and it'll work. So my personal update real quick here. I know I've talked a little bit. I don't believe I shared this last month. I went back and looked at my notes and I watched the recording. My wife, who was an air traffic controller after 31 years, is retiring. So we like to think of those milestones as we go through our life journey, and that was a huge one at my house. So she's closed the book on that chapter and now going to enjoy some time with the family and doing some things that she enjoys, but she's retired. So high five to her on that. And the tie in there I like is the fact that there aren't a lot of jobs that require more discipline than air traffic controller. Discipline seems to be a common theme. So our friends, my wife and I, our friends like to chide us on how two type A personalities found each other and how we found a way to coexist. And we do this once in a while, but we're still married after 25 years and obviously still enjoy spending time together. So I like to say that, there are certain events that only happen once. And I kind of give my daughters a hard time about that. But retirement is one of those such events. And as she was approaching her very last day, I said, hey, look, you only get one last day. And I think she almost started to tear up when I told her that. And I said, hey, savor it, enjoy it, remember it, because you can't go back and redo it. You only get one last day. So I hope I didn't get too nostalgic for you guys there, but it's a great way to end something familiar and know that, hey, she's closing the chapter on that part, but she's looking forward to obviously a new beginning. So turn it over to Dave.
Yeah, fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Dave, you can do your introduction and an update.
All right. Thanks, Bret. As someone we talked on one of our pre-games, as someone that does spend a little bit of time in an airplane flying. I'm very grateful for people like Bret's wife that you never get to see them, but they do a fantastic job of keeping you safe in the air. So incredibly important work. And I'm really, really glad that she had a good long career with air traffic control and finally gets to enjoy some downtime now. It's obviously an incredibly stressful job. So real happy to be here. This book this week or this month, I really enjoyed. I read the first book that General McRaven wrote as well, and just really enjoyed that one. So that the pages just kind of flew by on this book. And when we were prepping for this call, I kind of made mention that, ever since I read his first book, Make Your Bed, that was several years ago. I need to go look at my notes and see exactly when it was, but every single day without fail, I have literally made my bed. In fact, even to the point, like when my wife and I are on vacation, staying in a hotel where there's, people that do that. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, you make your bed every day." So this was a really good book. It definitely held up just as well as the first one did. So here we are winding into the holidays. So as we were chatting, as we got together to prep for this, my students are exhausted. It's been a long, hard semester, and very much looking forward to give them a break as well. And kind of was thinking of some of the themes in the book as I was sharing with my students on Tuesday, and I made myself a little vulnerable. And I said, "Guys, I'm just as tired as you are. The content is exciting. I love what I do. That hasn't changed, but I'm tired and I'm ready for a break as well." So happy to be here today and talk about Bill McRaven's book.
Yay. I looked up really quickly. The other one came out in 2017.
Okay.
And it was based on that commencement address that he gave at the University of Texas. We'll talk about him in a minute. And thank you to anybody who's joining us live. I had my LinkedIn open on my phone here. So if you post any questions, I can see them. If you join us live. So post any questions that you want or chime in with any of your comments, and we'll be glad to pay attention to those as we go through our conversation here about the wisdom of the bullfrog. And before we go into that, Bret, thank you for reiterating our purpose of our monthly conversations, because the whole intention of this is to encourage lifelong leadership and to inspire leaders of tomorrow to invest in themselves today. And so by getting in this regular cadence of reading at least one book a month, and we all read several, but at least talking about one together, we hope that the reader or the watchers, the viewers, will sometimes read the book, but you might decide you don't want to read the book, but you learn something from our experiences that we share in the conversation. So we don't it's not really a book review. It's more about our experiences as we can relate to the book. And I usually have a lot of questions about the book and how we look to see how it applies to leaders today. And I'll post a link in a few minutes about where you can get the past conversations. Okay, so this month is The Wisdom of the Bullfrog. And the bullfrog refers to the author himself. He was the oldest Navy SEAL at the time. He was 37 years in the Navy, but when you're the oldest of the SEALs, your nickname is the Bullfrog. And the subtitle is Leadership Made Simple, but it's not easy. So in Bill McRaven, Admiral William McRaven is the author. So let me tell you a little bit about him. Let's see, retired from the Navy a few years ago, and he was the 9th commander of the U.S. Special Ops from 2011 to 2014. He's recognized national authority on foreign policy, U.S. foreign policy under President George W. Bush and Barack Obama, and obviously other U.S. leaders. He commanded the Special Ops Force at every level, including taking charge at the highest level. And he shares several stories in this book of specific examples during Desert Storm, serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, commanding troops that captured Saddam Hussein, rescued Captain Phillips, and he's credited with developing the plan that led to the capture of Osama bin Laden in 2011. So from 2015 to 18, he was the chancellor of the University of Texas. He's the author of 3 New York Times bestsellers. And he was the runner-up for the Time Magazine Person of the Year in 2011. And I forgot to look up who was the Person of the Year that year. He has an undergraduate degree in journalism from the University of Texas, has a master's degree from the Navy Postgrad School. His dad was a fighter pilot in World War II, and his dad played in the NFL for the Cleveland Rams. He did track in college, and he's married and has 3 kids, and he's good friends, went to a grade school with a political columnist who works for the Washington Post and had worked for Time as well. So kind of funny how he's connected in with politics in that way. So we could go on and on about him and his awards, and the list of medals would take up more time than we have to talk about the whole entire book. So we're not going to list that, but there's plenty out about him and about his bio. The reason that we picked this book was because it was Veterans Week. Veterans Day was the other day. So I looked for a book specifically related to that. Bret mentioned his service, and we thank you for that. And also my husband is a veteran, so I thank him. And to all of the veterans out there, we thank you and honor you, and work to earn this, as the movie inspired us. So, all right, let's do we always start with a general overview. And then this book has 18 sayings from General Bill McRaven. And so we thought we'll talk about some of our favorites and where we have questions, but we do want to end before 3 or 4 hours, because we could talk about it for forever. Okay, so quick general thoughts. Bret, you want to go first? General thoughts?
Yeah, 2 real quick things. So you mentioned the commencements from University of Texas there. I think it's about 10 minutes long. I've watched it, I wouldn't say 100 times, but I've watched it multiple times. So for anybody that's listening, if you haven't seen it, Google it, right? It's on YouTube, however you want to search for it. But it's definitely worth a watch. And my comment that I made was, if you can watch it the first time and not get goosebumps, send me a note, because there's something not right with you physically, because it will definitely make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Relative to the book, my thought a little bit like Dave. Hey, I like the book. I breezed through it. It's a light read. I think it's about 200 pages. I don't know what the font size, but it's a relatively small, compact book, almost like a pocket book. So, Kelly always asks Dave and I, hey, would you recommend the book? And I'm going to say absolutely. Then I follow that up by saying, hey, is there new groundbreaking content here? No. I mean, these are time-worn, treasured, proven concepts that are not new. And there's just something interesting, though, about how we always need to be kind of brought back into focus. We need to be grounded. We need to be centered. I mean, it's almost like a New Year's resolution sort of thing, where you could read this book every year on New Year's and kind of just recenter your folks. So, I made a note to myself about the reference to Andy Stanley last month. If we're reading or asking questions, we're learning. So just simply by picking up the book, The Wisdom of the Bullfrog, you'd be learning. So think of it in that term. So I like to say that, hey, if we were to change the words around, we are what we read. I mean, some people say, hey, we are what we eat. But obviously, for reading The Wisdom of the Bullfrog, we are what we read. I mean, it definitely has an impact on our mind. So I kind of use the Siskel and Ebert thing. If you're a little bit older, hey, 2 thumbs up is what I'm giving it.
Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with just about everything Bret said. There's, the kind of the wisdom he shares is, a lot of tried and true business stuff. What really does it for me with this book and his prior book, along with the commencement speech, which is what his first book was based on, was the stories that went along with it. And, I'm one of those guys, I'm obsessed with, war history and all of that stuff, and incredibly obsessed with, the pathway to become a Navy SEAL. In fact, I think I've read 7 or 8 books for different, if you make it into the Navy SEALs, you're called an operator. Read several books about different Navy SEAL operators, watched the reality series SEAL Team about it, just love all of that stuff. But yeah, for me, it was, how he, told the stories. And what really kind of took me back was when I was a grad student, I was in one of kind of the first, not the first, but one of the first kind of online graduate programs. And it was by necessity for me, as I was working in the private sector and was overseas in London working on a project. So I couldn't physically be in a classroom for a while. But some of my peers in class with me were active duty military, and we had group projects that were assigned that required us to collaborate. And I remember at one point this guy said, well, I won't be available for the next 5 days. And I said, well, good grief, man, this is serious stuff. This is a graduate level course. We've got to collaborate. And he said, well, I'm in Saudi Arabia right now. And he said, we've got to go forward, and, we got to do this. And then I'm deploying to Iraq next. And I'm like, whoa, okay, hold on. I didn't know that. So, for me, as we get bogged down in the details and the hustle and bustle of what we do, and kind of always remind myself that, there are people that are, deployed and taking it the next step, and in between gunfire, managing to log into an online class and learn. And, people that can make that commitment have my utmost respect. I've been in some stressful situations, but I can say no one has ever been shooting at me in between classes or when I'm trying to study. So anyone that can step up and do that has my utmost respect. And if he writes a third book, I'll read that one too.
Yeah, good points. Good points. And I'm giving it 2 thumbs up, and I've already gifted it to a few people as well.
Oh, wow.
I have some clients who are MDs, and sometimes the medical field thinks that they don't relate exactly to business. And so sometimes military doesn't translate exactly to business either. So I thought that this one would be a good, easy read for the medical, the MDs that I sent it to relate to. So that, like Bret said, it's relatable. The way he words things, very simple, but still creative. And he gets to the point. He's pretty direct. And, but these are relatable sayings, and his stories are the nuances that he shares about the experiences that, I certainly didn't have I'm a military spouse, but not the same. And so nothing I've been through is similar at all to the stories. So sometimes I think people, being in the military, it is different than business. And when he refers a lot to the rank and file. So leading rank and file, when they can't leave, they are, they're there no matter what. So that changes the leadership. So I think that, and I mentioned that with the Jocko Willink book as well. That changes the dynamic of the role of the leader. So I think that's something to keep in mind. But should we dive in?
Sure.
Let's dive in. So we have our favorites. So Bret brought up we're just going to go through the ones that are our favorites and share quickly, since we all brought up different ones that are our favorite 3. And then I have some questions about some of them, including the first one that was our favorite. Bret brought up number 3, when in command. And so I have a question about that one. So Bret, go ahead and share, why was that your favorite?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Kelly. I did. I chose the number 3 in the title of that chapter is when in command. And I kept going back to extreme ownership, and obviously so. Admiral McRaven is a Navy SEAL, and Jocko Willink, the author of that book, was also a Navy SEAL. So they have an awful lot in common. And as I read this chapter, my thoughts kept going back to lead, follow, or get out of the way. Mm-hmm. Pretty simple saying, as Kelly pointed out. So I expect we can all agree, and we even talked about this in our pregame about Kim Scott's radical candor and her comment about rock stars and superstars. If you recall that book, and we covered it several months ago, businesses need rock stars. Not everybody needs to be a superstar, needs to be a ladder climber or somebody that's on the fast track to the corner office. So not to diminish the rock stars anyway, because they are a vital part of every organization. But in this case, right, we're talking largely about the superstars. And, those are folks that ultimately find themselves in that leadership position. So if your plans as a leader, whether it's advanced, junior leader or C-suite or mid-management, start planning now was my takeaway. And I spoke to a colleague recently who shared his frustration about the leadership team within their organization, where they had meeting after meetings and they just never seemed to result in an outcome. And they found themselves just discussing the same things month after month, and things just didn't seem to get done. They didn't get better. And ironically, as I read chapter 3, I just read it actually, and I paraphrased it, and I said to him, hey, You know what? Winning command. And I always find it interesting when you can apply the concepts from the book you're reading almost in real time. I just get a big charge out of that.
That's awesome.
But it happens. I mean, it's funny how it does. So, but so I said, winning command, and the teams, if you want, right, and you need to lead, because people naturally want to be led. And I, as an observer in my role, I'll often see other functional business units within the company, and I'll observe them and monitor their performance and their output. And oftentimes, it's just a lack of leadership or a team that needs a rudder. I mean, we sometimes talk about ships that need a rudder. Well, teams need a rudder as well. So when you're the leader, lead. That's really what I'm saying. And when you're not, and this was a reference to chapter 18, which I didn't use, but he calls it, be a good swim buddy. So that's that rock star reference, right? To say, hey, if you're not a superstar, be a great rock star, right? Or be a good swim buddy. But if you're in the front, you're the tip of the spear, you know what? Embrace it, get out there and do it. And as the chapter says, winning command.
And he talks specifically about making decisions and about not getting advice from too many people. And I do see that a lot in companies where they think, sometimes leaders think that they're being gracious and including everyone and getting so much advice. But what happens then is there's no accountability. So because if the leader gets advice from everybody, from 15 people 5 times, and something doesn't work out, there's no accountability, because they can say, well, I got advice from everybody. We all decided.
That sounds like groupthink. Is that where you're going with that one? Yep.
Exactly.
Now, I would say the counter to that is it's valuable to have mentors, right? It's valuable to have resources. It's valuable to have somebody that you can go to if you have questions.
Right. And that's different than what he's talking about there. My question in the chapter is, he talks in this chapter of 3 of when command, as a leader, you can't have a bad day. You can never look beaten, no matter the circumstance. If you sulk and hang your head, if you whine and complain, especially about the leaders above you or the followers below you, then you will lose the respect of people that report up to you. The attitude of despair will spread like wildfire. And so my question on that, we don't have to spend much time on it though, is I wonder what the author would say about today's buzzword of authentic leadership. So I do see a lot of leaders that think they're being authentic by saying, oh, I'm having such a bad day, and by sharing their bad feelings about their boss. Or sharing with peers or with a direct report, even about other direct reports. And, but even just in general about the bad day, that is that not being authentic. And, is it better just to have a bad day and share all of your emotions with everyone? So Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I see both sides of it. And I remember having a conversation with one of my leaders years ago that was, every time you saw him, how are you doing? I'm just fantastic. And I'm like, nobody is just fantastic every single freaking day.
Yeah.
And, when I had my performance review, he said, well, hey, how can I improve? And he was a little surprised when I said, be a little vulnerable. And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, not every day is as great as you make it out to be. And I said, I know it for a fact. And I said, people look at you, to kind of model that behavior. And I said, it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to get down in the dumps. Just don't set up camp there. Okay, that's a good point. I'm going to try. So I got to that part of the book. I'm like, well, I don't entirely agree with you here. But there is something to be said for that positive attitude and how contagious it can be as well. Mm-hmm. So I definitely see where he was coming from.
Yeah, I have a feeling Bill McRaven isn't running around like whistling zippity doo dah all day long every day.
Right.
Anyway, and so probably the bad day doesn't look too much different than a good day.
Yep.
So I get the point of leaders realizing your attitude is contagious, mm-hmm. and not underestimating that. Okay, let's go to one of yours, Dave. Which one of your favorites that you would like to share?
Oh boy, one of them. One point he made was "Run to the sound of the guns."
Number 6.
Again, I have not served in the military, and I have never had to literally run toward the sound of the guns, where clearly he has, as he talked about it in the book. But it took me back to my early days in retail, where we had a manager that ran the store. And there were multiple times when a customer would come in and engage with one of us and get upset, get hostile, disgruntled, pick your word. And the manager would just disappear and would just vanish. And I said, what are you doing? You're our leader. You've got to be front and center. We need you to help here diffuse the situation. Oh no, you had it under control. Whereas in the inverse, one of the greatest leaders I've ever worked for, go into her office, having a situation, some struggles, and immediately picks up the phone, calls all people involved. I need you all in my office right now. We got a problem we've got to fix. Oh, well, I'm busy. No, I need you here right now. And actions like that, you remember that sort of thing, that my leader took the initiative to not only fix a problem, but fix it right now. Mm-hmm. It was that important to me that I was that concerned and upset about it, that she was going to take that extra minute and take the time to fix it. So that one really resonated, run to the sound of the guns.
Nice. And that's what Brene Brown meant in when she talked about leaders should be vulnerable. She meant go toward the disgruntled employee, the difficult conversation, the challenge, go toward that. That's what she meant. But people took her all out of context and thought it, and act like it meant to tell everybody that you're having a bad day. I have so many examples of that, but in the interest of time, I'm going to resist examples of what you were talking about. Okay, let's see. So one of mine is, you brought up number 6. So one of mine is I'll go for number 9. Hope is not a strategy. So hope is not a strategy, and that now is the strategic planning time. Do the detailed planning necessary for success, but having a vision, he talks about having a strategy that tells how you're going to do it and a plan that shows who is responsible. So I'm a big believer in that in business and in life. And so since 6th grade, had a 100 things I want to do in life list. Here's my fulfilling life for 2023. And I'll work on, I do it every year between Christmas and New Year's. And I have 100 things that I had to do in 6th grade. Here's my list, my current one. And just by having it, things happen but by not doing it, then you cross your fingers and hope good things happen. And I think that's just too risky, leaving it up to everybody else. And so I like creating circumstances for fulfillment and success. So comments or thoughts, or want to go on to the next one, Bret?
No, I will. But I completely agree. I mean, those are great habits to have, and high five on that. I mean, as I always say, December will get here whether you have a plan or not. So let's have a plan. I didn't know you did that, Kelly, but there's certainly a positive habit there that we can all learn from. So I'll jump to chapter 14, which was you can't expect what you inspect. Probably something that we've all heard. So Admiral McRaven was really transparent, candid, which we were talking a little bit about leaders being vulnerable. You would think a guy with his career, storied as it is, and all of his achievements, that he never stumbled and he never, stubbed his toe. But quite the contrary, he was, somewhat vulnerable in the book, where he shared a couple of different times when, he found himself on the wrong side of different exchanges. So, naturally, we think someone like that never has that occasional setback. Here I am. I got the same thing. So I retired as an E8 Master Sergeant in 2007, and I started at the bottom as a 17-year-old, what we called an E1, or a private, called the clean sleeve, somebody who hadn't even earned the right to what we call a chevron, put a rank on their sleeve. I had no rank, and worked my way up until I obviously retired. So, and you can imagine, throughout that 22-year career, that I had all kinds of different leaders and NCOs and officers, so on and so forth, that really taught me how to be a soldier, which included, some of the simplest tasks when I was early in my career, to something as simple as shining your shoes even, and then obviously as I progressed, the task got a lot more complex. So early on in my career, my unit was on a 12-day mission out in the woods, and we were out in a very, what I called a humid environment. It was moist, it was damp, high humidity, and my rifle was an M16 at the time, and I didn't clean it, and it got rusty. The moisture got into the metal, and it rusted. And my sergeant, I don't know, 5 or 6 days into the exercise, said, "Hey, let me take a look at your weapon." And I didn't even think about it. I think this might have been my first exercise. So I handed it over to him, and he broke it in the middle into what they call the upper and lower receiver, and it was filled with rust. And I got a verbal tongue lashing, to say the least, about not taking care of my equipment. And the joke, I was an infantryman at the time, and the joke was, you take care of your weapon, and your weapon will take care of you. So, it goes without saying that, like I said, that I got that firm talking to, if you want to think about it. But I always find it interesting. There's these little things in life that here we are 25 years later still talking about it. And I can't really put my thumb on why that is, but there's certain things that will happen throughout your life that will just stay with you. And I can remember that sergeant. I can remember the conversation. I can see his face. I can see his eyes, and literally remember almost everything he said to me. Needless to say, I cleaned my weapon for the rest of that 22 years. But it goes to what Admiral McRaven was talking about and saying, hey, you can expect what you inspect. And, I try to live that mantra in so many of the things that I do. And we talk about that, as you prepare to be a CEO or a board member. It's, hey, giving what we call commander's intent, your direction, and then coming back alongside to follow up and inspect what you expected. So number 14 for me.
And that was one of the ones I had a question about, because of the one of the classes that I teach in the MBA program at Rockhurst is corporate social responsibility. And so a lot of the shenanigans and ethical breaches have to come at the highest levels, and examples come out all the time, every week. And so I was wondering, in the book, he referred to inspecting the uniforms and the weapons and the vehicles and the rank and file. And so I wanted to know, well, what do they inspect of the higher level people in the military? Who's inspecting all of them? And I wasn't literally thinking of that for him, but for in our organizations. And a lot of boards get to be kind of lazy, and they just trust whatever the C-suite says to them in the quarterly board meetings. They don't ask very many questions, and just kind of take whatever comes to them. And so there's not a lot of oversight sometimes. And especially if it's a public company and they're making money, they let things go. And so there can be lack of oversight there. And then, then there becomes a crisis, or there becomes an issue, and it can go on for an amount of time before it rears its head. So I would say, as a leader, build in the oversight, so that you have that built-in oversight for you, for your team, at all the levels and no matter what. So he gives, at the end of each of the chapters, he gives 3 actions for you to take as well. So there's good ones that I think apply to all the levels at the end of that chapter. So that stood out to me in that chapter. I thought that was a good one too. Thank you. All right, Dave, you want to do one?
Yeah. So another one I really liked was "No plan survives first contact with the enemy." And again, great storyteller when he talked about the raid on the compound where they were fairly certain bin Laden was at. That at the very beginning of the mission, one of the helos crashed. And that they had they knew that was a risk. They had a contingency plan for it. And kind of all my readings over my life of reading some of these military books is the military certainly has some things that I think they could do differently, but contingency planning is one of those things that is paramount. You have a contingency plan for your contingency plan for your contingency plan, and that's obviously why they're so successful in some of these very risky missions. And if you port this over to the corporate world, I've definitely had those times where I was not prepared with the backup plan. I went to do a pitch to the med school that I knew was going to be exactly what they wanted. And I'm within the first 5 minutes, first contact, right? They immediately cut me off and they said, "This is not even close to what we're after." And it's like, well, I don't have a plan B here. So lesson learned. But, to the other end of that, with me being a tech guy, I've seen so many people get burned over the years, and I had to do a presentation not too long ago at a place I wasn't familiar with. So of course, I show up incredibly early. I meet the AV person. I've got not one, but two laptops. Both of them have my presentation loaded on it. I've got a thumb drive with the presentation loaded on it. My presentation is loaded to my cloud storage. And the guy grabs the cable that I need to use to connect to the projector. And I get in my bag and literally pull out, I call it an old school box that is full of every single adapter known to man.
Yeah.
I'm a Macintosh guy. So, I've literally got 7 adapters in my bag. And he goes, I've never seen someone so prepared. I said, well, until you're standing in a conference room full of people and you can't plug your machine up, I said, it only takes one time. So contingency plan for the contingency plan. So great job of articulating that in the book.
That was a great example. That ties in with one of mine was Who Dares Wins. And it kind of went along that with that seek the opportunities to take risks, but you don't take, people think like, oh, they never take risks. Well, yeah, it's a risk, but we thought it all the way through. So when something didn't work out, we had the plan. Mm-hmm. So it didn't look like it was a risk because we had our plan B. So yeah, if you're prepared to take risks, then because you have your plan B and C and all that. Yeah, that was a good one. The stories though are so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you said he shares stories of where he got fired from a position or two. And yeah, he shares a lot about, he had some ups and downs in his career. Mm-hmm. All right, Bret, you want to share one more?
Yeah, I will tell you, if there was such a thing as a close second, he who dares wins. I always put the he in there, but who dares wins. I had a hard time figuring out what my third choice was. So I'm right there with you. I really like that one. And there's something to be said for being daring. So my last point was chapter 5. And this one just really hit a home run for me. And this one was the only easy day was yesterday. And I truly believe that we're a product of our experiences. And if we reflect back on those moments when we really grew or learned the most, it's when we were really, really challenged. Now, at the time, we were probably disgruntled and upset and disheveled, whatever you want to think of. But those are the times when we seem to grow. So again, a product of our experience and all the different relationships that we formed throughout our lives. So I was with a customer in St. Louis a couple of years ago, and this guy was kind of in the twilight of his career. And I was just having what I call, air quotes, one of those weeks, where for whatever reason, chose to take this guy and just vent. And it had nothing to do with him. The guy was actually a pretty jovial fella and easy to talk to, and been around the block, as I said. And he listened to me as people tend to do. And he looked at me and he said, it's called POP, privileges of the position. He said, you wanted the position, now you get the privileges. And I don't know, again, one of those silly, I call it stupid, but silly, stupid moments. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. So, and it's again, what we're saying is with every step of the corporate ladder and change in life, we get this shift in expectations. And I always say to myself, hey, if your goal is a 6-figure income, and I think that's pretty universal, a company has a right to expect the expectations of you. And every time you move up, those expectations get elevated, kind of what I call privileges of position. So I just find these little things fascinating. So I was talking now, as I often do, about my youngest daughter. She's now in her 2nd month at Deloitte, and her and I were talking, and she likes these little, I don't know if she gets it from TikTok or Instagram or something like that, but she was talking to me about her job, and I said, hey, consider the alternative. And I said, 99% of your peers would do anything to trade for your spot. And then she sent me a text and it said, hey, Dad, I found this. And it said, hey, pressure's a privilege. And I just smiled and I texted her back. And I said, what if there's such a thing as the apple not falling far from the tree? You're certainly it. So I thought that was pretty true. So, I'll close with this. I said, not all of us will ever be Navy SEALs. So, again, it's not the same easy day that they're talking about, but we're really not alone in that regard. What separates the good from the great, shout out to Jim Collins there, is how we navigate all these challenges. And so get out of bed, and as Dave says, make your bed, rise up and meet the challenges of the day. Because as the only ED day you're going to have is yesterday. And really, I think the thing that we're trying to point out there is that's a blessing, right? That's a privilege. The fact that today it provides you another opportunity or another challenge is truly it is truly a blessing.
And he talks in that chapter about the day you no longer believe you have something to prove, the day you no longer believe you must give it your all, the day you think you are entitled to special treatment, the day you think all your hard days behind you is the day you are no longer the right leader for the job. And I've said before, I don't think in this forum, but in other talks and keynotes to leaders, that similar to that. But when you are not going to give it your all as a leader, step aside.
Yep.
It's not fair to stay in that role and coast to retirement 5 years from now, and expect special treatment, but you're not really going to give it your all. So it's a high, the job requires high energy and stamina and resilience and all the things. The easiest day was yesterday. You don't get to coast. So step aside if you don't want to do it anymore. So,
well, and it's interesting. I'd add on to that, Kelly. I've seen leaders that are well into their 60s, and the level of energy that they bring is second to none.
Right on.
Anybody that's listening, this isn't an age thing, right? This is an
right on
personality thing. So don't misconstrue those comments. I've
absolutely
seen, yeah,
absolutely. Well, let's wrap up with where we need to wrap it up. So we talked in our pregame about each of us adding one of our own. So did you think about that? Adding one of our own to his 18 sayings. And so do you have a favorite one that you would add to the list?
I do. Kind of my personal mantra for a long time has always been actions over words. We've all been in those meetings where, you've got the director, the senior manager, whoever it is going, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then a month later, we're back at the same meeting. And it's like, what have you actually done? Well, I didn't get that done because I had this and because I had, no, show me results, show me actions. And, I impart that upon my students all the time, I couldn't get this assignment done because I had this and I had that. Well, why didn't you do anything about it? Well, I didn't think about it. Actions, give me those actions. So don't talk to me, show me the results.
Awesome. Right. Did you think of one?
Yeah. The way I kind of thought of this is, you think about all the different ways that we learn these little Admiral McRaven type things, and they're generally a coach, a parent, a grandparent, something like that. And I'm sure everybody that listens, and probably Kelly and Dave both, can think of things that their parents, dads, grandparents taught them. And so we think again in that framework of our experiences shaping our lives. So my wife and I both encouraged our daughter to be as active and involved as possible in sports when they were young, just more so about all the lessons that sports teaches than actually ever having any dreams of grandeur of them playing, collegiately or anything like that. So my hometown was extremely small. I had a graduating class of 66. Literally 66. The whole school, K through 12, I think was 700 and some students. So literally it took everybody, and they say it takes a village. It took everybody to participate in every sport, every activity, every committee, just to actually have a functioning organization. The upside to that, of course, is that if you went out, you played, right? If you put on the uniform, you played.
Right. Hey, that's good.
It is. I always think of these big schools here in Kansas City where we live, where they have cut downs and people that ride the bench and things like that. Not the case in my hometown. Doesn't mean we were very good, but if you suited up, you played. So my oldest daughter was progressing through her teenage years in softball. She played some travel ball and she made the varsity team and so on and so forth. She kind of plateaued. She got to her junior year. And, some of the younger players came up that had been well coached, and they were just very athletic. And anyway, long story short, she got to the middle of her junior year and she said, Dad, I'm not really seeing the field. I'm not getting many opportunities. I'd like to quit. And my response, we can talk about that when the season's over, but there's no quitting. And she looked at me like I was just absolutely crazy. And I said, no, there's no quitting. I said, you're a valuable part of the team, whether it's just in practice or whether it's, through camaraderie or levity in the dugout, whatever the case may be, but we're not going to quit. So needless to say, that wasn't the most popular response to my daughter. But again, it emphasized the value of a sport in simply more than the score and it's more about the life lessons. So if I had to put that into an Admiral McRaven saying, I would say chapter 20 by Bret Getzel is you finish what you start.
That's good. So I kept coming up with them, and then I'd go back and they all seemed similar to what he said or what we talked about the other day. So I'm going to add, so chapter 21 by Kelly is love first. So I'm going to say, even in business, just calm down. It's okay. Let your guard down. Put out the love. You'll get burned once in a while. You have thick skin. You can handle it. But don't judge. Don't be so hard on people. Don't be so hard on yourself and harsh toward others. And love first. And more people will step up to that and step up to the expectations of that and all of those things. So I just think more peace comes with that, and peace inside. And that's a good way to live. So that's the one I'm going to add. All about the love.
Love it.
Well, I've got this part right. Next month, we're doing December 14th. So
yes,
a little earlier in the month, but get that, get it done before that Christmas. So we'll see you all a little earlier. That's the second Thursday of December. So keep that in mind. We're covering The Gift of Influence by Tommy Spalding. I jumped on the internet this morning and read his bio and was particularly impressed by his focus. I'm all about developing the next generation. And he spent a lot of time and put a lot of energy into developing leadership traits and characteristics in youth. So I encourage everyone to come along with us on that one and take a look at his bio. We got 4 weeks from now to cover that one. That's The Gift of Influence by Tommy Spalding. So Dave mentioned Thanksgiving. Love that time, right? So I want to wish everyone the very best this year as you enjoy that time, whether it's whatever your tradition may be. We're currently have valued our time together with you, and want to thank you for investing your time in us. I always like to say that time is your most precious currency, and invest it wisely. So my closing statement, I like to say this all the time: keep reading, and then I've added the Andy Stanley comment here about keep asking questions, and then keep investing in yourself. It's the best investment you'll ever make.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, thank you both. And thank you anybody that was here live today and that watches the videos on LinkedIn or YouTube. We look forward to being with you again in a few weeks and continue investing in yourself. Have a happy Thanksgiving and a wonderful holiday season. We will see you again in a few weeks. And we are out.